Hi, today I'm here with Eric Furda, Dean of Admissions at University of Pennsylvania and co-author of The College Conversation, a practical companion for parents to guide their children along the path to higher education. So you wrote that before the pandemic.
The final pages were being, literally being sent over to Viking Penguin at the end of February and into March. So Jacques and I, we didn't want to make this a COVID book while we addressed what was going on at the time in the introduction, including schools going test optional and virtual tours for admitted students and just the sending of college students home as well, as we all tacked over to virtual learning at the high school level and the college level.
Okay, so you already kind of have been dealing with this since March, as other schools have been doing also. But now we've got a new crop of people, students who are juniors and seniors, and everybody is on edge about what they're supposed to do as it relates to the college admissions process. How do you see it affecting this year's applicants and then next year? So this year's seniors and next year's seniors.
So I think for the students who are juniors and seniors in high school right now, it's how much of a continuation of what I have learned, since March, and what does that look like for me, impacting my activities or what my experiences look like. I think for some students, it puts a finer focus on what matters to them. And I really hope that we're not just going to try to march to filling up an extracurricular line, because now students can say, well, what really matters to me and what is in front of me? So what does this coming back to something look like, and why am I doing it? And I think that's a really important question for our juniors and seniors and their parents. Why am I engaging and spending my time in something? Is it worth it? How do I value it? It's not to fill out a college application.
Well, I love everything you said. I also in particular loved when you said about filling out the extracurriculars, because I remember one of my kids asking me if they had to fill every line. So they started to kind of come up with a list of like maybe a little exaggeration of some of their activities, because they felt like if it had 7 lines, they had to have 7 things. So what do you tell kids?
Well, I think back, and the reason I'm smiling is there was a faculty member back when I was the head of admissions at Columbia that said, if there's 14 lines, students are going to try to fill out 14 lines. You need to have fewer lines. And that over time actually has taken place. And so, I do think that it's, when you think about what I value as much, and Jacques and I have a framework for extracurricular activities that we share in the book. One is, that activity or engagement that you just really see as being so critical and high priority to you, and that you do feel like you're going to be the leader in it. And that's where you're going to be the editor-in-chief. You're the one that, the other teammates may look to make that final shot. That's a lot of pressure, and you're pushing yourself, but we hope that students are aiming for something like that in their lives, whatever that may be. The second piece would be something where you are not the go-to person, but you're there for enjoyment. I love when I see my son, who's now 12 years old, in a choir, but he's the one wearing the high top sneakers and the jersey, right? Because he's seen that way in his athletic role, but in this other role, he could just relax and sing his little heart out, whether he's good at it or not. And then the third, and I think this is really important for where we are right now, and we've discussed this so much, or we've heard this so much in this COVID time since March, and that is, gee, I never would have had dinner with my family so much, and the value of that. So the third place, and this was pre-COVID, is basically, where's family and faith and community? And it doesn't mean they can't intersect with those other two, but what really matters to you, and making sure you're carving out some of that time for those areas of your life.
So how is the kid going to tell you about what's important to them right now? Does that shine through on their essay?
Well, I think that the essay is one opportunity, and the way Jacques and I think about the college application is really being this mosaic, and there's different pieces and different threads that are going to create this overall picture. The essay is one place where we can learn about a student. If you're fortunate enough to have a college counselor, that's another opportunity, another piece of this mosaic. Who am I asking to write my teacher letters? Again, if you're at a school where your teachers know you and you have that opportunity, you can think about how these different pieces will knit together. The main application platforms, the Coalition application and the Common application, they have COVID specific space. I think on the Common application, students may be able to address up to 250 words about how COVID has impacted their learning and community and overall kind of social well-being. There's a lot of different spaces where you can have some dialogue. But here's my suggestion on how to do that, students. Take down notes. Get your little notepad and just start writing things down. You don't know when inspiration is going to hit you and what you want to share. And so make sure that you're jotting down notes that could serve as a catalyst later on for when you actually sit down and feel like you're going to start drafting your college essays or any other part of the application.
So you actually are designating in the Common App, there's a designation for COVID
There is.
experiences. So does that mean that you would suggest to high school juniors and seniors not to write their essay particularly about their experience during COVID?
It's a great question. And, I think the immediate response by most is no, don't go there. Don't talk about the road less traveled. Don't talk about your grandmother or grandfather, these topics that just don't work in college admissions. I've never adhered to that. I think you could have some real opportunities. And I think the most important part here is thinking about what is it that you want to convey. And maybe because of this, something else becomes amplified. You're still, you have certain ideas and those ideas became solidified because of COVID, because of racial injustice and social injustice. And that's really solidified what you think. Or on the other side, it completely flipped your thinking and your eyes are open in a different way. And that's something that I think should be discussed, should be put on the table, because it's going to introduce aspects of yourself that these college admissions folks don't know, because you're a complete stranger to them and you're choosing your introduction.
So I've always wondered, you've already used a lot of words about like having an extracurricular where you're striving to be the editor in chief, or what happens to really strong students who don't aspire to lead? Is there room for them also?
It's a great question. And, just steps from where I am in College Hall right now, you have the Wharton School of Business, and we talk a great deal about, well, what does leadership look like? And so many times it's not exclusively about leadership. And we use these terms, but like, what do they mean really? What does it mean to work as part of a team? What does it mean to actually listen and not need to be the one vocalizing all the time? And so in some ways, people have different leadership, attributes. And sometimes those aren't the people with the title or even the person who's the loudest person in the room, but they're able to negotiate a business term, right? They're able to negotiate a situation and help an idea move forward or a project move forward, which doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, that's the co-captain or that's the editor in chief. It's in some ways some of those individuals who, in a more, nuanced way can move something forward. If you think you're going to get the type A leadership personality in every room, in every group, you're not going to get much done. You're going to have a lot of ideas, or not even ideas shared. You're going to have a lot of opinions shared, but no one's going to be listening to one another.
All that jockeying in one room.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so down to the tactical. A lot of schools are test optional right now. What do you recommend for kids? Should they be fighting? Some of the tests I think you can take online now, right?
Yes.
So should they be fighting to take the test over and over and over again to get the score they want? Or what does test optional actually look like in admissions?
I think for a lot of students, I mean, not for a lot of students, here's the first piece is in whatever environment you're taking a test, particularly if it's in person, colleges should not be driving health and safety considerations. And if we said that they were required, then parents and families, students would be compelled to take a test. As test optional, don't read so far into it, health and safety first. And I know we're hearing this too often, right? Health and safety first. So we start becoming numb to it. In this aspect of your life, that should really be a driver. And we know some students who took the tests and ended up coming away testing positive. That's going to happen when large group of people come together. Don't read too much into it. And if you were able to sit for a test and maybe even take it a second time, it's going to be very rare. Then what you need to do is take a look at, and Jacques and I talk about this in the book about admissions calibration, is go to what last year's admitted student profile looked like. And if those tests solidly put you in the upper quarter of the testing profile, I would submit the test. And if it doesn't put you in that upper quartile, then I probably would not submit it. I mean, that's my advice, because what you're trying to do is calibrate, will submitting this test further my candidacy? Will it help my candidacy? And certainly, I don't want it to hurt my candidacy. If you're firmly in the top quarter of that testing profile that's reported by the colleges, then I think you submit. One other way that I would think about this, and I'm just not quite sure that people would think about test scores this way, they're also an opportunity. Hey, there's those students whose grades are not at a certain level, and maybe they were having that upward trajectory with grades that we hear about a lot, through the third quarter of the junior year. That test score may actually be something that would give the school confidence in you, not only to admit you, but actually then to, succeed at the school. There may be a score in math and you're interested in engineering, and that score is going to help you.
So the ends are a little clearer, right? Like you do great, submit it. You do terrible, don't. And then all that middle stuff is going to be on you, on the student to kind of do some homework and evaluate.
Yes, and here's a big piece to this, and we've been having a lot of discussion about this. Particularly for the current high school seniors, you had your first year, second year, and third, 3/4 of your junior year, and this may not be shocking, but your courses and grades matter, right? We could focus on test scores all we want. Your courses and grades matter. And if you hear yourself saying, well, I really didn't do very well, and then if there's a reason for that, let us know. And I think that's where some of this additional information can help. There might have been a course that you didn't perform in to the level that you had expected or hoped. A counselor or other individual could address that information. Maybe you want to address it in some way. Courses and grades matter. And in a lot of ways, particularly in test optional, we're going to be leaning heavily on transcripts.
Okay, so getting a feeling for the school when you go on the tour is like this big moment. I mean, I've seen my kids kind of, have like their body reacts physically to walking on the campus, and they know they want to be there, and that's not an option right now. So what do you encourage kids to do right now to get like the most out of a virtual tour and to get a real sense of is this a place for me?
Obviously, college admission offices are offering a great deal in terms of virtual tours, student-led tours that are virtual as well here at Penn. Our academic partners are offering sessions. And so see what the schools are offering. We're actually offering more now than we ever did before. And it's also more accessible because you don't have to travel, and it's open to everybody.
You get to invite these kids into your school, and then they come, and the feedback we get is they're not quite prepared to live on their own. So here's your moment. Tell us what you wish we would teach our kids before we send them to college.
Again, great question. Colleague and friend had a recent book that came out called Stressed Years of Their Lives. And Anthony Rothstein and B. Hibbs are co-authors. And it's really about that sense of coming, this sense of perfection in order to get into a place. And then, okay, we hit that finish line and we think that's the finish line, but okay, here we go. Here's 4 years of college and what are, competitive environments. And so I think as much as possible, and again, college admissions has a lot of responsibility within this, is allowing, not being a 24/7 self-service to your child. They need to make decisions on their own, even though they can connect with you immediately in so many different ways. So maybe not always being there so they can try to make some decisions on their own. This sense that, and really share that the world is and life is not perfect. Now they know that, but they expect themselves to be that way, and that you don't have that expectation of them. Okay, that they're going to scrape their knee, kind of that analogy, but do that, maybe even pretty deeply academically, and that it is okay. But then what do you learn from that? How do you move forward from that? So I think being supportive while making sure too that students had that sense of independence, because that's what happens when when they go on to that college campus and they need to be independent. Now that independence is also going to matter when they're upstairs in their room or in that little area where they're logging in right now as well. I think it's even more important that you have some separation, because you are literally right there. You're doing your work in one corner, they're doing their schoolwork in another. You're hearing what they're doing. Don't just try to reach across the room and help every moment. They're going to have to figure out some things on their own.
Well, that might be the hardest thing we're charged with right now, because the temptation, we send them off to school and then we don't know. And it's perfect. It's actually perfect. And then they're in our house doing what they're supposed to be doing, or maybe not, and we know. So good luck to all of us. Okay, leave us with something hopeful.
The challenge is always you need to play the long game, even if you're talking about like money and investing, right? You have to plan for college, you have to plan for retirement while you're also in this moment. And I think that there can be something that's hopeful is, everyone's waiting for, a vaccine and, when things get back to normal. And, I think in some ways it's reflecting and realizing that, this is an opportunity. I'll go back to the extracurriculars for me to actually be my genuine self and think about what matters the most to me and how I then want to implement that and apply that in many different ways.
Eric Furda, Dean of Admissions at University of Pennsylvania and co-author of The College Conversation. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.